What's up guys, today we're going to be looking at the new Gearbox Pro Control and Pro Power paddles. Right off the bat, I want to say that these are my favorite Gearbox paddles ever. They are definitely premium paddles and they come in at $275, but don't waste your money and use discount code BRIONASPB at checkout to save big time. I mean, Gearbox has always been one of the most innovative companies in paddle design, but Gearbox has really outdone themselves this time. These paddles are a massive step forward for them as a company. And in fact, it's a massive step forward for the paddle industry in general. The standard has definitely been raised with these paddles, so let's check out why. There are a plethora of distinct features about these paddles compared to other paddles. To start off, let's talk about the paddle shapes. So it comes in an elongated shape and then a shorter shape called Fusion. The elongated shape is 16.5 inches and the Fusion is 16 inches. I love that they did this because most standard paddles, they take the length of the paddle and they add it to the width, and then it makes the handle much shorter. The reason that I love that they did this style with these paddles is because the 16.5 inch elongated paddle and the Fusion model, which is 16 inches, are essentially the exact same paddle, just a ½ inch shorter, which still gives you the advantages of faster hand speed, a little bit better touch, not as much power. It gives you more maneuverability. I think more paddle companies are going to be doing this in the future as well. Another unique thing about these paddles is that they're all 14 millimeters, the elongated version and the Fusion version, which is their 16-inch version. That's crazy because every other paddle company, their power paddle is the thinner one and then the control paddle is the thicker one. With Gearbox, that's not the case. There's actually no plastic in any of these new paddles, none. What they've been able to do is just change the makeup of the carbon fiber inside of the paddle, and that's what makes it play so drastically different from each other. I think that's amazing. I think going into the future, years down the road, we're going to be moving away from the typical plastic honeycomb inside of these paddles into something more of like what Gearbox is doing, because one, they last for freaking ever. Because there's no plastic, there's no core crushing, there's no core corruption, there's no delamination. It's fantastic. All the material inside these paddles is just layers and layers of carbon fiber, and depending on the kind of paddle they want, they will manipulate that carbon fiber to give distinct feel, whether that's more control or more pop or more power. It's fantastic. Gearbox has always been really good at innovating. I think these paddles are like the peak of that innovation. These Gearbox paddles do come with a 1-year warranty, which in my opinion is plenty of time. The typical paddle that I run through is around 2 months before the grit is completely worn off or it gets delaminated or something else. But over a year, if you can play with a paddle for that long, that's fantastic. These Gearbox paddles are meant to last. Like I mentioned before, there's no plastic in these paddles, so they don't get compromised the same way as these other honeycomb paddles do. The spin on these paddles are lethal. There was never a shot that I felt like the spin was lacking with this paddle. Roll volleys felt especially good. As you've come to see and come to know, I do like my roll backhand volley. It rips through the core. I feel like I can put the ball on a dime pretty much wherever I want because of this spin. And when it comes to these rolls, keeping people back on the baseline is no problem at all. Both of these paddles surprisingly have great dwell time, even though they are 14 millimeter paddles. And the feeling off the face is so distinct. It feels like there's a tiny itty bitty trampoline on the paddle, and the ball sinks into this trampoline and then launches back at the opponent. It feels like it's almost delaminated, but in the best way possible. It feels like the paddle is actively trying to help you do everything that you're wanting to do. It's giving you that extra force to be put back into the court. The Gearbox Pro Control paddle is easily in the top 5 best control paddles of the year, probably even top 3. When I first picked up this paddle, I was baffled by how comfortable this paddle felt when hitting blocks, dinks, resets, whatever. Every shot just felt like you're hitting a pillow. When hitting touch and control shots with this paddle, it's just delightful. You never feel like you're going to overhit it. You honestly have to try to pop the ball with this paddle. The one thing I will say is that sometimes it felt too soft, and I found that a lot of control paddles have this same problem. When it comes to hitting a third shot or a reset or a dink that doesn't have any pace from the opponent, where you have to generate all of it yourself, it doesn't transfer the energy very well because it's focusing on being soft and forgiving. But when you do add lead tape, it fixes that problem. Controlling the point with this paddle felt very intuitive, very easy. Third shot drops were not a struggle. Transitioning to the kitchen and hitting, whether it was a volley reset or a short hop reset, wasn't hard at all. Hitting blocks with this, you essentially just stuck it out there and it'd be blocked back into the kitchen if it was a speed up. I did wish that it had just a touch more pop, so that way those smaller shots where you have to generate your own pace felt a little bit more intuitive and easier, so that way you can keep your strokes smaller and more controlled. But as I was saying, top 5 control paddle of the year. Easy. The Pro Control paddle naturally isn't built for power. The power from this Pro Control paddle is pretty much what you'd expect. And if you've ever played with another control paddle, I feel like they're all in the same kind of range when it comes to power. It's definitely not there, but it makes up for it in the control. The Pro Control paddle has a much more muted feel. At first, I didn't like how muted it felt. I felt like it didn't have enough responsiveness. I felt like I didn't know exactly where I was putting the ball, but I soon grew to really like it. The Pro Power paddle is somewhat of a different story. It is a true power paddle. I actually didn't have a problem with my third shot drops with this Pro Power version, which I was surprised by. I give that credit to the spin. Returns did take an uncharacteristically long amount of time to get dialed in. I mean, for the first couple hours of playing, I literally missed 2 or 3 returns a game. But once I did get it dialed in, it quickly became one of my favorite shots to hit with this paddle. Drives and serves with this paddle felt superb. I never felt like I was overhitting with either of these shots, but was able to get the correct depth. The ball didn't sail as much as I was expecting it to. When it came to block volleys and roll volleys, it was great. I never felt like the ball was launching or sailing long. I felt like I was able to push it back to the opponent with a considerable amount of pace and got a lot of free points off of that. This paddle is meant for power. This paddle just begs to be hit hard. It naturally feels amazing on serves, amazing on drives. You're not having to swing super hard for tons of energy to be put back into the ball. This paddle does thrive when it comes to hands battles at the kitchen line. I was drilling with a buddy of mine that plays with the Selkirk 002, which might be the poppiest paddle that Selkirk makes and one of the poppiest paddles on the market. It's the same one that Tyson McGuffin uses. It's the same one that James Ignatowicz uses. And I didn't feel like I was at a disadvantage at the net when having hands battles with him. This paddle kept up just fine with it. If anything, it might be slightly less poppy than that paddle, but not by much. It's hardly noticeable. The Pro Power paddle is extremely responsive. I definitely felt every single thing I needed to feel in regards of the energy being transferred into the handle, into my hand and arm. I never felt like I didn't know where the ball was going, and if I did miss-hit a shot, I definitely felt it, but I like that attribute of this paddle. From my experience, Gearbox has never had the largest sweet spot. The sweet spots on their paddles have always felt really satisfying, very nice feeling, but it definitely hasn't been large by the industry standards. These paddles definitely change that. There is no other 14mm edgeless paddle in the world that have a sweet spot like this one. You can literally see the outline of the sweet spot on the paddle. It's super cool. When I first got these paddles, I didn't think that they were going to be anything special. They looked like the previous versions. They were the similar thickness. I think the Fusion model with just it being a half inch shorter and that's it. I thought that was really neat. But other than that, I didn't think it was going to be anything great. But I was completely wrong. All of their research and dedication and different manufacturing techniques compared to the rest of the industry has built up and culminated to this point with these paddles. This is their masterpiece that they've been working on for years and years. Every single paddle they made has peaked at these paddles. It is going to change the industry. That's literally what it says on their marketing, and it's not just what they're saying for marketing. It really is. It really is. They're that good. This is honestly the first paddle that's priced at a premium paddle price point at $275, where I legit think it's worth it. Every single dollar that you pay, you will get out of these paddles. And if you want to check these paddles out and you want to buy one, use discount code BRIONASPB at checkout to save you some of that money and make the value even better for you. What an amazing paddle, what an amazing product. I love playing with them. You're gonna see myself and every other rec player at your local courts with one of these in their hand. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for staying to the end. I'm so excited to see what you have to say about it, but I will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.